Alright, guys, let's get into it. So, we have Ilunga Jr. Makabu versus Saul Canelo Alvarez. A little bit about Makabu, or Makabu, I guess that's how they pronounce it. He started in 2008, campaigned at light heavy, got stopped, I think, in his first fight. You can't really take too much from that, but I think he was weight drained. And he outgrew the class very quickly. So all his fights after his first 2 or 3 fights were all at cruiser or 190 and up. So he's not a massive cruiser. He's not that tall. He's quite thick, but he's more dense with muscle wise, rather than having a massive frame. He's a big guy. He's a big guy, but he's got a lot of muscle on him. His last 10 opponents, 84 losses, 186 wins. So that tells you about the level of competition that he's going up against. Like, between him and Canelo, Canelo's got, I think, let's see. Yeah, his opponents have a combined record of 515 wins and 10 losses. There's levels to it. There's really levels to it. That's footwork, that's reflexes, that's grit, that's determination, that's you just can't compare the competition between them, really. Okay, so I saw Ilunga Makabu's fight against Dmitry Kudryashov, and this is a guy that's known to have a glass chin. Okay, like Dorticos, I know he's a big puncher, but he blasted him out, and he had him doing this on the floor, convulsing. Like, it wasn't a pretty sight. He's got like this really thin, little small pointy chin. You just have to like that, and he's going over. What I'd say about Kudryashov, he's got huge power himself, so he can dish it out, but he can't take it. And what I found interesting about this fight was that Makabu's got a high KO ratio. I think what's he got here? Sorry, just checking box right now. Yeah, 75% KO ratio, against this level of competition. But he couldn't knock out Kudryashov with one shot. It was, if anything, it was like a life and death battle. And, his defensive deficiencies were really showing in this bout against Kudryashov. He was getting hit left, right, and centre. And I can't help but think, if that was Canelo Alvarez, he would have been peppering him to the body and catching him in between these slow exchanges. And another fight I saw was him with Alexei Papin, and this guy, again, he carries good power, and he was touching up Makabu a lot, and Makabu just kind of he willed his way through that fight, and by the last round, he was so tired, and he literally saved himself with a knockdown, of Papin, and without that, it was most likely the fight would have been declared a draw, or he would have lost, like a very, very, very minor split decision. But a win's a win. But again, like I said, there's levels to this, and I know Alexei Papin is bigger than Canelo Alvarez, and he has good power, but he has good power against a certain level of opposition. Canelo's elite. The guy's gone in there with Triple G, someone that's known to bully cruiserweights in the gym. You know, someone that, you know, used to beat up on what's his name, Sergey Kovalev. You know, he eats cruiserweights for breakfast. You know, and he couldn't crack Canelo. So for me, it tells me something. So strengths for Makabu, I think he's got strong legs, you know, and that helps him soak up some of the damage from these shots, and it does help him, like, you know, get out of range. He's physically the bigger man, like he's got a lot of size. He has decent power. You know, like he knocked Tony Bellew down, and, you know, he made him do like a roly-poly going backwards. It was quite comical stuff, you know, but then Tony Bellew got up and knocked him out and left him out cold, you know, so he didn't hurt him that badly, you know, but he's heavy-handed. He's very heavy-handed. Obviously he's got a height and a reach advantage, but when your legs aren't as fast as your opponents and your timing is not as good as your opponents, you know, all that can be negated anyway. And we're seeing Canelo go up against Callum Smith, you know, Caleb Plant, people that are way taller than him, have way longer levers, you know, and they haven't been able to keep him out. Weaknesses for Makabu, so I'd say head movement, definitely. He's got a very big head as well, so he's got a big target right there, you know. Some people see the head as a you know, like a shield, you know, like if you got a big head and a big neck, you know, you're not likely to get knocked out. But I think for Makabu it's a weakness, because that target's right there. He looks like Frankenstein, you know, and Canelo could just tap at that forehead all night. It ain't going nowhere. It's not moving. Also, hand speed. He's got heavy hands, but they're not fast hands. And his timing's just not like Canelo's, you know. His chin, I think, you know, people are being unfair about his chin. I've seen a lot of people saying that he can't take a shot because he got knocked out by Bellew. But, you know, Bellew is a pretty heavy puncher, you know, and he gives a lot of people problems, and, you know, Bellew's a good fighter, so you can't really gauge anything from that. And from what I've seen, you know, he's taken punches from people like Dmitry Kudryashov and people like Alexei Papin, and, you know, he's kept ploughing forward, you know, and he's managed to win the fights. So I think he is pretty durable, but I just don't know how he's going to hold up to the body and with the accuracy of Canelo Alvarez's punches. So keys to victory for him would be to pressure Canelo very early on. Don't give him time to set or get off too many counters. Force him to move around, lose a lot of energy, like the first fight with Triple G. Use his size to intimidate and keep him at the end of his jab. You know, I don't think Canelo's going to be able to out-muscle this guy. You know, like he's not going to be able to push him back, but he's going to be able to punch holes in him. But just physically, like his sheer presence, he's not going to be able to, you know, take too many risks. You know, because this guy is used to getting hit by bigger people than Canelo, and hitting people bigger than Canelo and still knocking them out. You know, so he has to be cautious. Okay, so Canelo listed as 5'8". I'd say he's closer to 5'7". He's got a 70.5-inch reach. But, you know, one thing to note about Canelo is, even though he started, you know, like 140 and went up to 147, 154 early on in his career, you know, he was 15 years old, you know, and he grew into his man body. So he came up as an adolescent and grew into a man, you know, and he's only now in his prime. And Canelo's not a small 5'7", 5'8". You know, he's got like a 33-inch waist. You know, so he's compact. He's basically like a person that's like, you know, 6'2", but in a shorter body with a big wide frame. You know, so that's how he's able to go up the weight classes like that and to pack on all that muscle and, you know, still retain his speed and everything that he had before. You know, I'd say his best wins were obviously at 160, and he had some good competition at 154 as well, but, you know, he never fought the Demetrius Andrades, Charlos. You know, there are gaps in his resume, but he's done enough. Like, he's beat enough people to solidify his place as a pound for pound champion, in my opinion. So he's literally just unified the 168 pound division. The competition there wasn't too steep, I would say, and they were, you know, way less experienced than him. But, you know, undisputed is undisputed, and you can't dispute that. So, strengths for Canelo. You know, I don't need to talk too much about Canelo. We know what he does. So he's got hand speed. He's got good power. You know, good one-stop shop kind of power. I think as he's gone up in weights, he's gained power. You know, because he's not draining himself so much. So he can actually focus on, you know, working on his defense and positioning himself to land his counters and to land the big shots, you know, and pressuring people effectively, you know, rather than, you know, trying to trade with these little guys who are, you know, coming with all this Pacquiao speed and all these angles, and it's a lot to keep up with, you know. So going up in weight has actually been an advantage for him, because he was always a strong guy, you know, but now he doesn't have to, you know, drain himself and fight faster people. Okay, so punches he'll be using, I'd say that right uppercut. He might catch him like he caught Saunders. His left hook is always dangerous. And he can count with any of them, like at any time. And his jab. I think his jab's going to be effective, his left hook, and that right uppercut, definitely. That's all he's going to need. You know, he's going to be eating the body as well. Weakness of his, I'd say, was his stamina, but he's negated it by, you know, focusing on defense and, you know, playing like a war of attrition where he makes the other person work. He puts a lot of pressure on you. He's making you work. If you saw the fight with Caleb Plant, you know, Plant's doing all this fancy footwork. Canelo's working around him. He's cutting off the ring. He's cutting off the ring constantly, you know, and then he's reminding him that he's there. Boom, he's weakening him to the body and making him tired, you know, but he really picks his punches well. His keys to victory would be to basically fight him kind of like he fought like Sergey Kovalev, you know, a big, powerful guy, one that probably hits harder than you, you know, but can also be hurt as well. So, you know, he'd have to be wary of Makabu's size and probably a bit of power advantage and break him down in the second half of the fight. And as we've seen with Makabu, like, the guy gets tired, man. He's got a lot of muscle on his body. So Saul's going to have to swim without getting wet, you know. He's going to have to be in there, moving around, making the bigger man throw, miss, and miss, you know, until he can tell that he's lost some of that sting off of his punches. He's gonna have to keep the bigger man guessing, like all the time, you know, just cutting off and using angles, and, you know, catching him, you know, making him think twice about his counters. My official prediction, I do see a stoppage. It might not be one punch. It might be like a TKO kind of win, you know, where he's just beating, you know, Makabu gets really tired and he just starts beating the shit out of him on the ropes, you know, like the 10th, 11th round, you know, and the guy just can't take anymore. And then I think, you know, when he softens him up real good, you know, then he'll give him like a, you know, that James Kirkland, like, you know, right hook, boom, just knock him out, you know, right at the very end of the assault. But he'll kind of be out on his feet before he gets knocked out if the referee doesn't, you know, intervene and stop the knockout. Yeah, so let me know what you think, guys. It's my first video, so I'm interested to do some more. Alright, see ya.